everyone, and welcome to this briefing. This regional briefing today will, I think, mark the end of it. We started yesterday, and my coach and I have divided the regions among ourselves. I am basically presenting on the for Asia Pacific and then Africa, whereas my co-chair is handling CEE, RULAC, and Western Europe. So far we have covered the Asia, Pacific, CEE, and RULAC. So today is when we actually come to the end of it with the Africa and Western Europe. So they more or less happen on the same day. So the purpose of this briefing is to really enable you as the delegates, most of you who could be going to Rome, for us to give you really our overview of this framework, and then you can relate with the text as is, excuse me, and maybe also to get some preliminary kind of feedback from you people before we go there, so that it gives us as co-chairs what to begin thinking of as we head to Rome. Of course, all these feedbacks will still, be part of feedback that will come, even those that we shall get during the open working group to meet. So let me go to slide 2. If you are with me, I hope everybody is there and that you are able to see the slide. This is mandate and organization of work. So before I actually present the overview of the draft itself, draft 0, let me first give you some preliminary information here. So we all know that the basis for this framework stems actually from the Convention on Biological Diversity. Of course, we are saying it's going to be a global framework that will bring on all the other biodiversity-related conventions. But when you see, if you talk like the mother framework, then it is the CBD. And you recall that already in 2010, we adopted the 2050 vision, for which we know that said by the time we get there, then biodiversity should have been valued, conserved, restored, and wisely used. And that once we've done all that, those critical 4 elements, then we know that we should be able to maintain the vital ecosystem services and therefore be able to sustain a healthy planet as well as deliver benefits that is essential for all people. So that is what the 2050 vision is. And that is what this, as you'll be seeing in the presentation, this is what this framework is going to try to put in place measures to help us get there. But we've heard, and most of you who are in these regional meetings and other consultations for this process, that this time the framework that is going to replace the current strategic plan should consider the 3 objectives of the CBD in a much more balanced manner, other than maybe concentrating on 1 or 2 of them only. And so the issue of conservation, sustainable use, access and benefit sharing, we have tried to reflect them in this framework. And if you see them not clear at all, you are free to tell us that maybe it is not yet clear enough. But we've tried to take this into account. And this is something that emerged during the original meeting and other consultations. So going to slide 4, this is a party-led process and stems, of course, from decision 1434 that was adopted by COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, where the open working group was, established, and then the 2 co-chairs were designated to guide this process. So for the 2 co-chairs, our major success or measure of success lies in about 2 areas. One is that if we can deliver the framework at COP15, that is the success that the co-chairs are looking for, but also that throughout this process, we should be able to create as co-chairs a very positive ambience for negotiations. Because often, sometimes negotiation can mean to be a very difficult kind of atmosphere, but we are hoping that when we enter there, that we maintain the kind of good spirit and the flexibility we have seen in the regional workshops and regional meetings and consultation. So we hope that that can as well still be exhibited when we go to the negotiations. So as co-chairs, there are these overarching principles that was adopted in that decision, which I've just talked about, and there are 13. So every time that we are doing or carrying out these activities, we are trying our best to make sure that all these 13 are visibly seen, that they can be seen to have been implemented. And therefore, when you look at what we are doing now, could be part of being still promoting the participatory approach to this process, so that we don't really leave anybody behind, and therefore that will bring the element number 2 of being inclusive. And then, of course, the other aspects you see there, like being visible, being catalytic, knowledge-based, and so forth. So without having to read all of them, but those are the things that we think as co-chairs we have tried our best to go through this process. And that's number 13 is also very critical. You will see sometimes something emerges, and therefore it will call for flexibility from both the co-chairs, the participants, stakeholders. So we should all, of course, be aware that somewhere there might be some difficult issues to handle, maybe with the time, but we need to show that element of flexibility. So you can read all this and the details in that decision 1434. Now, we have a very short time in terms of rationale. Actually, as we speak now, the time is running, and I know very soon we shall be in Rome. So basically the months are almost 7. By the time we finish Rome, it might come down to 6 or so. So the time element is beginning to tick, and therefore meaning that whatever we shall be doing at every stage of the process should actually be well focused. Of course, we know that meeting and addressing the needs of people is not easy, but at the same time, we shall try to stick to the CBD rules so that we guide this process properly. So where are we so far with the process? That is slide 7. You'll notice that this process basically involves about 3 major phases. You have the regional consultations. You have phase 2 dealing with thematic issues or workshops or consultations, which in many ways is going to interface with the phase 3 on the negotiations. So when you look at the regional consultations, they were all done. We have had the first meeting of the working group. We had the informal briefing in November last year. And then in terms of thematic consultations or workshops, we have had one on resource mobilization, on marine, on also on restoration. And then basing on that and other inputs that we have had, we've been able now to produce this 0 draft, for which I'm presenting now on behalf of my co-chair. Then in February, there will be, of course, the second meeting of the working group. But before that, we are going to have the accountability and transparency thematic consultation that will take place just before that working group meeting starts, 21st, 22nd. Then after the meeting itself, after the second meeting of the open working group, we are then going to have the capacity building thematic workshop that will take place again still in Rome, and that will be from around 30th to 1st of March. And after that, we should be able to hold another consultation. This is on the sustainable use sometime in March, towards the end of March, and first week, I think 30th March and 1st of April. And then, of course, now, based on that, we should be able to go to SBI 3 and SABSA 24th. And then we're also hoping from there that we are still going to give some informal briefing like we did in November last year. And from then on, after the meeting in May in Montreal, we will then come up with what we are calling here as draft 1, which is an improvement of the current 0 draft. That should be saturated prior to Kali, prior to the third meeting of the Open Working Group, for you, the stakeholders and delegates, to again have a look at. We shall try our best to really stick to these timelines because, as I said earlier, we don't even have luxury of losing any time. And after Kali, we should be able to work on the document further and have it ready then for presentation at COP15. So that is just broadly where we are, what has been done so far, and what is coming up. So let's go to slide 8, which now brings me to the issue of the zero draft as saturated. So for us, going to slide 9 as co-chairs, we really were mandated to prepare this zero draft, basing on the consultations that we've had, the regional meetings, the expert thematic workshops, written submissions, but also, as I mentioned earlier, that we also had, very good outcomes, very good input at SABSA 23 and the 11th meeting of the working group on Article 8J. And so that is what we've used to come up with this draft. So we are hoping from here on that we shall begin having successful discussion at the Open Working Group meeting, because beginning with the Open Working Group meeting too, that is where we are beginning to do negotiations, and then of course end up with the third meeting and then deliver the framework to COP15. So this has been a framework that we have delivered the zero draft in as concise manner as possible, but also we have tried to be comprehensive. We have tried to be realistic in a way, but you will see that we have really tried to address the issues that came from IPBES and the GBO. So going to slide 10, this is the context within the framework of the IPBES assessment report and how it has fed into this framework. And I think this again came out very strongly during the discussion that this time around we should be dealing in this framework with drivers. We should be having our targets, our actions on tackling or handling drivers. And these drivers are both direct and indirect. So in the IPBES report, you will see those those 4 drivers: the invasive alien species, pollution, climate change, land use or sea use change. So those are the direct drivers of loss of biodiversity. And then the indirect drivers, production patterns, consumption patterns, trade, technological innovations, and governance. So this framework has tried to build on this as we move on. Before I present the framework, let me at this point tell you that this framework has a purpose, and its purpose is to galvanize global action and transformative actions by governments, by civil society, including IPLCs, even businesses, CSOs. So that should be done in accordance to the manner in which we have set out the vision, the mission, goals, and targets. So we are talking about a framework which is global in nature, not only limited to the CBD. And so that's why we are saying it should be able to galvanize, it should be able to bring people together to take or to implement the vision, mission, goals, and targets as set out in that framework. So in many ways, this framework we've had, and we've tried to link it to implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we see also that it can help us to promote synergies and coordination with relevant processes. And that could be happening maybe in the climate change and land degradation, CMS, CITES, name them. There are many. There could be regional processes as well. So this framework should be able to feed into that. So as that's happened with this current strategic plan, even this one, we expect it to be implemented at the national level with, of course, action happening at subnational, regional, and global levels. You can't do that alone. And we see this framework also as a basis for the development of national goals and targets, and as necessary, also may give us that framework upon which to update the NBSAPs to facilitate its implementation. So now let's go to slide 12, which is on the theory of change. I'm going a little bit slowly because I feel I should try to explain as much as I can. So I said earlier that when you look at the Vision 2050, which I read out earlier, that is where we are heading with this framework. The framework should deliver us with that vision of living in harmony with the nature. We have valued, we have restored, we have rightly used, biodiversity. So that is where we are heading. But if that is where you want to go, then you should try to backcast in a way and say, what do you need to be doing now to get there? So you know where you want to go, you know where you want to be in 30 years from now. So what do we need to be doing now to get there? And then that brings us to the goals from 2030 to 2050. And we had a lot during the regional consultations. And like I said earlier, that this time around, people want to see the 3 objectives of the convention reflected very clearly here in this framework. So we thought that one of those goals, the goals should cover conservation of species, ecosystems, and genetic diversity. It should cover sustainable use. It should cover benefits shared or sharing of benefits. And once you've done that, then you have a healthy, resilient ecosystem, and the species too should be healthy. And then you're going to meet the needs of people in a much more sustainable manner, because you are minimizing loss of biodiversity, but there's a benefit accruing, there is use happening, but the use is sustainable. Now, when you come next, you look at that gray box, the 2030 mission. So within that mission itself, there are those 3 elements you see outside: the means of implementation, the enabling conditions, responsibility, and transparency. So that is a very important component of the 2030 mission. But within there are 3 critical areas that we shall be looking at: reducing threats, meeting needs of people. And I think as long as people's needs are not met, sometimes conservation becomes a big challenge. So there's that win-win situation that we should be aiming at. And then tools and solutions. So if you go now, we go now to slide 13. This is where we try to again bring more text into the 3. That is reducing threats, meeting needs of people, tools and solution, but also bringing some text on the means of implementation, responsibility, and transparency. So when you look at reducing threats, those are actually the 5 elements that are covered by the IP-based report. So you have got land use change, sea use change for that matter, you have climate change, you have pollution, overexploitation, invasive species. And then when you come to meeting needs of people, is where we're emphasizing here sustainable use. We're talking about food, water, health, cultures, sharing benefits. And then we go to tools and solution. That's where issues on incentives and economic sectors, laws, regulations, policies, mainstreaming by safety, behavioral change, and sustainable production are going to be considered. So you will see targets that, when I go to the next slide, you'll see targets that actually covers those areas broadly. So when you talk about the means of implementation, capacity building, resource mobilization, technology transfer, traditional, those are some of the means of implementation. And of course, reporting, review, and planning will be important in responsibility and transparency. Now, the next slide basically gives you an overview of the whole framework first, as is. So you'll find A on your extreme right, that is where we have got the Vision 2050. I already explained that. Then we talk about B, which deals with the goals to 2030. And from there, if you have your goals, you have to have a mission. So C is about the mission. And then once you have the mission, which you are driving yourself towards, then you should have the targets, which you are going to achieve to get you to the mission, and then the mission to the goals, and the goals to the vision. So that is how we have tried to summarize it here. So going to B, you look at the 5 goals now proposed in the 0 draft. And goal A, or 1, is on area and integrity of freshwater, marine ecosystems, terrestrial ecosystem. B is on species extinction and abundance. C is on genetic diversity. D is on nature being able to provide those needs of people, nutrition, access to water, resilience from natural disasters, and then the efforts to achieve the targets for the Paris agreements. And the fifth goal is on benefit sharing. So that is in terms of goals. And I said, if you have the goals, then you have to have a mission to help you get to the goals. So the current mission proposed in the zero draft arises from what we had during the consultations, and we tried our best to really bring all the ideas that came from that consultation, but also aware that we need to keep the mission statement this time around a bit short and precise, which could also be easy to communicate, which can send a clear message to people out there of what we are setting ourselves to do. So the current or the proposed mission so far in the zero draft is that we take urgent action across society to put biodiversity on a path to recovery, aware of the loss which is taking place for the benefit of planet and people. So that's what, it is not cast in stone yet. We know ideas will come along this. Then when you go to now the other D1, D2, D3, D1 is on reducing threats. And you'll see when I go to the part that deals with the targets, that you'll see targets that is on restoration, there's a target on land use, retaining those areas, there's a target on protected areas, on invasive species, on pollution, dealing with the nutrients, pesticide, plastics. There's a one on sustainable harvesting, and then climate change. You're talking about nature-based solution, adaptation, and so forth, and the contribution of biodiversity to that. Then D2 is on meeting the needs of people in terms of food and livelihoods, agriculture, and other services, or and other species. Then water, health, cultures, sharing benefits. Now, when you go to D3, this is where mainstreaming largely happens here. You're talking about handling or tackling incentives and subsidies, mainstreaming in those policies, national planning, mainstreaming in economic sectors, resources and capacity building for implementation, biosafety, sustainable consumption, education and knowledge, and then you have the issues on IPLCs, youth, and women. So then the last one about behavioral changes. So those are the, broadly speaking, how those targets tackle the different areas that are tackled by the targets. Before I go to the targets, let's go to the goals themselves. So here, the 5 goals are now, the other time it was just a summary of them, but here you'll see there's a text that we have tried to put on them. And the first goal, or goal A, is dealing with the no net loss in the area and integrity of freshwater, marine, and terrestrial ecosystem. No net loss. Those of you who know, this could be things that deal with it already, biodiversity offsets and so forth. We shouldn't see areas just being destroyed and there's no kind of effort to get a restoration part of it to replace or to make sure that we don't just keep losing ecosystems. Then the other one is on percentage of ecosystems threatened with extinction. The aim is to reduce this, but again here, you will see that we've not yet put a percentage because we feel that this will be done as SAPSA 24th. So what is important at this point is to look at the text which is being proposed. Is that wording smart enough? Is that wording what we think can work? Once immediately we get the other component working, I mean the X%. So that is what the one that deals with making sure that we actually prevent extinction of species, and there's a certain percentage upon which we should reduce that, and that the abundance of species has increased on average by a certain percentage. Then C is dealing with the genetic diversity is maintained or enhanced on average. Again, goal D, this is mainly on the what nature provides for the benefits to people. And so you see there that there's a percentage of people that we think should be experiencing or having improvement in their nutrition. Still, with the figure is not yet put at this point. And then again, a certain number of millions of people who are having improvement in accessing sustainable water, drinkable water, and then C deals with, of course, resilience, natural disasters. And we are talking of, again, a certain number of people there that should be able to be benefiting from that. And 4 is at least 30% of our efforts to achieve the targets of the Paris Agreement should have been reached by 2030. And E is on benefit sharing, that should be shared fairly and equitably from the use of genetic resources and the associated traditional knowledge. And that again should have increased by a certain percentage. We had during the consultation, the briefing, that we should be able to, at this point, think of some elements for monitoring, some suggested indicators as well for measuring progress towards these goals. So you'll see that we've tried to already give you some monitoring elements dealing with the change and rate of change in the extent of natural ecosystems and biomes. Then we're also talking about change in ecosystem connectivity and fragmentation, change in ecosystem integrity and degradation, and rate of ecosystem restoration, number of extinction, and then change in conservation status. So that is the monitoring elements. If you're going to try to look at your progress towards the goals, these are still very preliminary elements, which of course we are going to keep improving on with time. And then when you're going to look at some indicators for measuring progress towards the goals, is where we are saying here one could look at forest area as a percentage of total land area, trends in forest extent, species habitat index, wetland extent, trends index, biodiversity habitat. So they are listed there, the red list for ecosystems, proportion of land that is degraded over total land area, global ecosystem restoration index. So those are some of the selected indicators that could help us to see, are we making progress towards the goals as set. Now, slide 16, I'll not repeat this, I already said it, that it is basically a mission that we'll try to make as precise as possible, not to be as wordy as the current one. So you people, you'll have the chance to look at this, whether it is something that actually talks to what we want to do. This is like a very critical middle point. It is to deliver you to your goals, but also to connect you with your targets. So it has to talk on both ends. Now let's go to the action targets, and we begin with the one dealing with reducing threats on biodiversity. I may not read this as written here, I'll just try to be summarizing them. But the first one deals with retaining and restoring freshwater, marine, and terrestrial ecosystem. Again, there's a percentage that we have given there, 50%. So that is what we are aiming here. But also you will see here that we are talking of issues connecting or related to connectivity, integrity, retaining existing intact areas, and wellness. So you will see that this tries to talk already to one of the goals. Then protected areas, we know the importance of this land area, and we are still also giving a percentage here, but this is where you'll get the mention of the 30 by 30%. And also this particular target deals with other effective area based conservation measures. So that is the target that has now tried to operationalize that COP decision. Then 3 is on invasive species, that invasive alien species, that we should be able to control all pathways. That will mean maybe at a country level, even at a global level, we should be able to know all those pathways, and then therefore control the introduction of invasive species from those pathways. And the percentage here we're thinking of is 50%, and hopefully we can do that by 2030. The other target 4 deals with reducing pollution by at least 50% from excess nutrients, biocides, plastic waste, and so forth. I think this is where you begin seeing us talking even beyond the CBD, because it begins going to other conventions as well when you're talking about this pollution. Then 5 deals with making sure that where there's harvesting taking place, where there is trade taking place, and use of wild species, that this is legally done and that it is sustainable. It is at sustainable levels. Target 6, still under reducing threats, is now dealing with the contribution of biodiversity to reducing or mitigating adverse impact of climate change, but also help us to adapt to climate change and disaster risk reduction. So this is where the link, and we've had this a lot during the consultations we've had, that there should be that link between the CBD or between climate change and biodiversity, and we are trying to bring it here under this target. Let's go to target, action target that deals with sustainable use. And this is on meeting the needs of people. Target 7 basically is saying we should be able to enhance sustainable use of wild species. For sure, we can't stop use, but it is the question of making sure that how they are being used is at a level which is sustainable, so that these benefits, including nutrition, food, livelihoods, and others, continue to accrue to people. And so the percent, again, get a certain number of millions of people that we hope we can get it, so that it talks to the policymakers out there. And also we want to reduce human-wildlife conflict by a certain percentage. And I think this is an area in Africa, most of you know that. Protected areas are there, most of them are not having had boundaries in some countries. So, you know, there is wildlife moving in and outside protected areas, there is human-wildlife conflict. And so this is an area we could try to see whether we take measures to reduce it. Then target 8 deals with conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity in the agricultural sector. Agriculture will remain as a sector that is so important, that will be important to most, if not the global community. People have to be fed. There are some, in most countries, like maybe the LDCs, you will find that majority of the people is agriculture, which is the mainstay for livelihoods. So we can't shy away from agriculture. It's needed, but how we now really try to organize biodiversity issues in this sector is going to be very, very important in the next 30 years, maybe even beginning with the first 10 years. So once we do that, once we enhance conservation and sustainable use in that sector, then the question of sustainability and resilience of ecosystem in the agricultural sector with respect to biodiversity should actually be improved. Then target 9 is talking about enhancing nature-based solution, which in a way should lead to people having the clean water provision. And I think that's why you'll see in the beginning that we are talking about the goals that brings out all this. So try to see whether our goals are, these targets are talking to the goals that are talking to each other, because you can't implement targets that are not going to help you to reach the goals. Then 10 is enhance the benefits of green spaces for health and well-being. Most cities, as you're aware, people just tend to have just concrete places all over the place. There are buildings, there are paving everywhere, but also we know that cities that are green tend to be a lot more healthier to people that are staying there. So helping them to really adapt to the adverse impact of climate change, but also it is good for their health on a day-to-day basis. So we want, if possible, that we reach a level of 100% by 2030. And then target 11 mainly deals with ensuring that benefits from the utilization of genetic resources and related TK are shared fairly and equitably, again, causing or resulting in a certain number there in terms of reduction. When we go to action target, which deals with the tools and solution, this is the one, as I said earlier, that you see a lot of elements of mainstreaming coming here. And I think when we had during the consultation, people are not, I think, visibly seeing mainstreaming. We hope they're beginning to come out here. But if that's still not concrete enough, you have the opportunity to bring them on board. But this is a target 12 mainly deals with reforming or eliminating altogether those subsidies that are harmful for biodiversity. Again, this talks to one of the targets under the current strategic plan. So that is what we should be aiming at. And then, of course, the aim then is that we should either see a positive change or that there should be some element of being harmful to biodiversity shouldn't be happening as far as these other incentives are concerned. So they should be biodiversity neutral in a way. Then target 13 deals with the mainstreaming or integrating biodiversity values into our national and local planning, development processes, poverty reduction strategies, and accounts, ensuring that biodiversity values are mainstreamed across all sectors, So we have not tried to list any sector here. All sectors, in this case, I think gives us opportunity to see how we go about tackling that. And also you'll see here we're talking about strategic environment impact assessment and impact assessment are comprehensively applied. So that is target 13. 14 is to reform economic sectors so that they are more sustainable, that they have better, or their practices are more sustainable in the long run. And of course, there's a percentage given there of at least 50%. So we hope that we can reduce those negative impacts by that amount of money. This is now you're talking more to the private sector and others, or even other sectors that may not be under our own docket. Target 15 deals with the capacity building and resources for implementation. We know that this is one of, or these two plus others are so critical for implementing this framework. Most of you know what has happened with the current strategic plan when it comes to this issue of resources. And so there is the understanding here that resources should have increased by a certain amount over time. And it should be commensurate. I think this is a very important wording here. It should be commensurate with the ambition of the targets of the framework. If we are going to be very, very, very ambitious, then the resource envelope should be also, I don't know, use the same very, very, but should be one that will match that. You can't have an ambition even at individual level and you don't have the means to achieve it. Then it means you're just dreaming. You have something very good, but largely you just leave it going unattended to. So this is where resource envelope has to match our level of ambition. So the targets, as you, the delegates, will review them, as you maybe want to make them more smarter, as you make them more ambitious, let's also take into account the element of resources that should be made available. Then 16 deals with establishing and implementing measures in all countries, to prevent potential adverse impacts of biotechnology on biodiversity. This target talks strictly to biosafety. This very, very target here. I'll try to have sometimes some issues with this next slide. I have to push it a bit up so that I can see it better. Just bear with me a little bit. It tends not to be so visible, all the targets. I think now, yeah, now I can see them. So let's go to target 17. And this is about people taking measures at individual level to ensure sustainable consumption, but you're also dealing with the people's lifestyles that should help us really reach these levels of not being so wasteful, so that we can, at the end, achieve sustainable consumption at an individual level, at society level. Then 18 deals with the education, promoting education and the generation, as well as sharing and use of knowledge in relation to biodiversity. And of course, you're talking even how to use the traditional knowledge, the innovation and practices of IPLCs. All these are important. And of course, the free, prior, informed consent should be taken into account. And target 19 deals with, sorry, I think I went off there. Target 19 deals with promoting the full and effective participation of IPLCs And again, I think this talks almost to either the current strategic plan, the target that covers issues on IPLCs, I think could be target 18. So that is where we've tried to make sure that each of our IPLCs are still not lost, but we have brought in issue of women, which are also covered in some aspects of the current IT targets. But you will see here that we brought the element or the idea of youth, aware that this is the generation that is basically going to implement for us this framework. Most of us may put this framework there, but in about 30 years or so, we may not be able to implement this framework ourselves. Then 20 deals with, of course, fostering diverse visions of good quality life. And with that, I'll now go to the next one, the next slide, which is on the implementation support mechanism. I'm on slide 20. So this framework will rely, of course, on an implementing support framework being there. And again, as you've heard me say earlier, you'll see from this slide, we are saying it should be commensurate with the ambitions set out in the goals and targets. We've heard, sometimes we are told we are not yet ambitious even with some of these targets, but the amount of resources available to implement the framework needs to be sufficient. And it needs to increase from all sources over the time that we're going to implement this. Capacity building, I mentioned this. Generation and sharing of scientific information and knowledge is a very important one. But of course, monitoring and review of the framework, and then technical, scientific cooperation, technology transfer, innovations that is relevant to implement the framework. Slide 21 talks about the enabling conditions. You could have the resources, you could have the capacity of everybody built, you could have almost every other thing you need would be there. But some of this condition now becomes those other factors. You could even almost look at them like they're almost some level, maybe like externalities, but there are these very other factors. Some of them you may not have direct control on. For instance, if the rights of IPLCs are not being recognized, you could have challenges. So in terms of enabling conditions, the participation of IPLCs and their rights in the implementation of the framework should be recognized. 2, participation of all stakeholders, including women, youth, civil society, the academia, private sector, scientific institutions, name them, subnational authorities. These ones is the other one. If they're not with you, then you may just be talking framework only known to yourself. So everybody else must be speaking with you, same language. Gender equality, women's empowerment, and then gender responsive approaches, recognition of intergenerational equity. This has been said over and over. And that's why I say some of us, most of you and me, we are participating in the drafting or developing this framework with the support, of course, from a wide range of stakeholders. Synergies with other relevant multilateral agreements, we've done well here. We have had a meeting with the MEAs, and we are going still to have that meeting again sometime in March. You'll see that. So that is what you need as well, that you are synergizing with the other MEAs. Partnership to leverage activities. You need to build partnership. You cannot do all these things alone. Local, national, regional, and global levels, and then adequate, inclusive, and integrative governance. Where there's poor governance, you can have lots of challenges of doing anything you want to do. Then adequate political will, as you know, that most of what we do is decided most of the time by our political leaders. So they have to be with us on this framework. They have to be. And that's why there is that decision where we should be having a high-level panel. Climate change, as you know, almost every other leader talks about it. Are we going to have opportunity where we hear politicians talking about biodiversity as well? Then, and the need to prioritize resources for them. Because once they say put resources for biodiversity, who else is going to challenge that? Then you have got now slide 22 dealing with responsibility and transparency. This is now Those are the three elements outside the 2030 mission box. So we see here that as we implement the framework, there should be measures to monitor, review, and report on what we are doing. And so at national level, we should be able to see that this framework is still being reflected in planning processes, especially the NBSAPs, and then reporting, including through use of identified indicators. Work has already started on this. We should also see what we can do with the other relevant MEAs and then other processes, bring on board the IPLCs and civil society, the private sector. All this needs to be there. Periodic reviews and stock taking and any other additional mechanism for transparency and reporting. Outreach, this is where we have not done well with the current strategic plan. And if we are planning, if we are hoping that this framework is going to implement it at a national level, at a local level, national level, regional level, global levels, then we should be able to do a better job this time around in terms of raising awareness. I know most people say you spend so much money on awareness, we don't measure success of awareness, difficult, put money in restoration. But at the same time, you cannot just go and say you are restoring an area. If you have not talked to the people, if you have not educated them, they have not understood what you're doing. So creating awareness about this framework, making people understand that it contributes to their well-being on this planet, I think will go a long way. Now, let's look at the next steps as I turn towards the last part of my presentation. That was the framework itself, overview. Now, there are upcoming activities. I think I mentioned some already up front. There is, as I said earlier, going to be a thematic workshop on transparent implementation, monitoring, review, reporting. That will take place from 21st, 22nd February in Rome, as I said, just before we start the second meeting of the working group. And then after that, we will have the second meeting of the working group taking place from 24th, 29th. Then the capacity building workshop takes place immediately after that, from 1st to 2nd March. Then Band 2, this is where we always hold our meetings with the other relevant MEAs. So this is the one that is planned for 25th to 27th March in Switzerland. And then sustainable use, the notification went out, and I think the deadline was given for us to do the nominations. I hope you've done that. And so it will take place from 30th to 1st April. And then you have access and benefit sharing. This is planned. We shall be communicating. Of course, SABS at 24th and SBI takes place in May. As you see the date there. Then the third meeting will take place of the Open Working Group takes place in July in Cali, Colombia. Once we are done with that, we should be able, shortly after that, to gear up for COP15. And the date is now given there, 15 to 28th October in Kunming, China. Of course, this venue, as you've seen the change of venue for the Open Air Working Group 2 was not out of anybody's will, but the situation that has happened in China necessitated that we need to really think about safety. We need to think about how to go with this. And so after consultations here and there, and take into account what is happening in China at the moment, the Chinese government did agree with us that we need to look at another venue. And of course, we really sympathize with them. Our condolences to them, to those who have already lost their lives. And we know that already they could have put in a number of facilities resources for this. But some of the things, these are the externalities that just come when you have not planned. So hopefully we shall be there in October for COP15. But there are other meetings that will take place even before COP, which could also be, and which we are planning to participate in. And those are the ones you see towards the end of that slide. This is the Ocean Conference in June, early June. Then you have the IUCN World Conservation Congress, more or less second week or mid-month, mid of June, 11th to 15th. This will be in France. Then you have the UN Biodiversity Summit of Heads of State, September. And I think this is where we are trying to see our best that the issue of the post-2020 framework takes center stage somewhere. So in terms of proposed agenda and schedule for Open Working Group 2, how are we proceeding with that? As the co-chairs, we really want to minimize plenary, but to maximize the use of contact groups. But also we are going to try our best to make sure that we don't hold many parallel contact groups. So at maximum, there should be 2, because we are aware that certain country delegations maybe only be 1 or 2. So you do not want to see, you have like 3 running or 4 running at a go, and then delegates are trying to be in all those 4. Therefore, don't even concentrate a lot. So we will try our best to balance that. So we are going to have some questions which we are going to try to set to guide the discussions in the contact groups. But those are the 4, for now, contact groups that we think will be there: the mission, the goals, the threats, sustainable use, tools, and solutions. So these actually will form the contact groups we are talking about, the 4. But in many ways, we want to use the format we used in the first meeting of the Open Working Group. So we are going to have call-ins for this. And usually the practices we are going to have developed country, least developing countries, like that. So there will be 2 co-chairs, and we try to balance them in that format. So what do we expect from Open Working Group 2? As co-chairs, first is that we will have records from the contact group noted by the plenary. The contact group will be reporting back to the plenary, and then so that the plenary owns up that. And then we also hope that there will be a very clear mandate to us co-chairs to prepare draft 1.0. This is draft 0. So we should have draft 1.0, which, as I said earlier, will start taking shape after May, when we have held the meeting of SABSA 24 and SBI 3 and other processes that may be needed. So that's just the summary of how you will see slide 26, on how you will see we are trying to organize those different days with the different contact groups. On day 1, 24th of Feb, most of the morning hours, as most of you know, after around lunchtime, could be on opening of the meeting, statements coming from the regional groups, and of course, where we get the time, then we shall open up the 0 draft itself. But for the statements up front, we are proposing, and I think it will come out, that we only have regional statements, not country statements. And again, of course, we are going to guide you on the minutes. I don't think we shall give so many minutes. We need you to save your time, to really have more time for the subject matter of the day. So that day 1 could more or less be issues on plenary, depending on how we handle it. But you see now that day 2 is when we begin talking about the contact group CG2. You'll find there's CG1, there's CG3, and so forth. So you'll see we have tried to put targets for now, which will be discussed under each of those contact groups. And I think if there are any changes, then you will see them. But overall, then, that builds on what I was saying earlier. So I think that is it from me. It have taken a while, but I thought I should go a bit slowly. So this is the theme for COP15, Ecological Civilization, Building a Shared Future for All Life on Earth. Thank you very much. I think now I can get some feedback from you. Hello?
Thank you, Francis. I'm Abdallah Zidan.
Yep.
Thank you for a very comprehensive and very clear presentation. I have only a few questions. I can see that can you project slide 12, please?
12.
Yes.
Okay, let me get back there. I also need to get there. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is on the theory of change.
12.
Yeah. On the theory of change.
I think this is the one, right? No.
Yeah.
I think yes, this is the one. When you say goals from 2030 to 2050,
yeah,
and what does this mean? And what about the goals from 2021 to 2030?
Okay.
You got my point?
I got. Okay.
Then I can see that the implementation and supporting mechanisms. We just mentioned the financial resources in a very humble way, you know, where in fact it should be very prominent. Without adequate financial resources, this framework will not be implemented, because one of the problems for the current strategy that financial resources were not provided. So this will have to come out very clearly. And then
connected to a web.
And then for a number of goals, the baseline information is not available to measure whether the goals are implemented or not.
I beg your pardon?
For the baseline information is not available or to judge or to monitor and to know whether the goals were implemented or not. Not all, but for some of them.
Yeah.
I'm in a meeting for 1 hour.
Hello,
Global biodiversity.
And the monitoring elements do not cover all the goals, cover only some of the goals. Thank you.
Okay. I think let me respond to this. Somebody should be able to mute the speaker. Okay. Thank you, Hamdallah. Let me try to respond to your, I think this comments here. They are very good comments. We are talking about goals from 2030 to 2050. Where is the one from 2021 to 2030? I think this is just fine. Hello? But I think this is just we were trying with the understanding that when we are talking about from 2030 to 2050, there is understanding that we shall have come from 2021 to 2030. You are looking at where you've been already from 2021 to 2030, 2031 to 2040, then 2041 to 2050. So there are a series of time elements in there. But I've taken note of this. If it is not very clear now, it means we have to make sure that people understand that we are beginning to reach to the goal of 2030 in 2021, perhaps. So I take note of that. Then the other one is on means of implementation. Again, since you've raised it, then I can comfortably say here that this issue also came out yesterday during the Asia Pacific briefing, and you almost use the same word like you used, that it is not strong enough, it is weak. We should look at ways to make this much more stronger than it is. And I have to say that some of these statements we put here, in many ways, are like placeholders. We didn't want to come with a text that still does not touch anything about means of implementation or resource mobilization. Why we've done that is that you will recall that recently we just had a workshop on resource mobilization. I think it was sometime mid of January towards, I think it came after we already uploaded this framework, the zero draft. So we are going to use then the information that we have got from that consultation to beef or to strengthen that particular target. But for now, we wanted to make sure that there is something we are saying about this resource mobilization. So hopefully now that the resource mobilization thematic consultation took place, we should be able to look at how the outcome from there is going to inform us with this particular target. Baseline, yes, I agree we need them to monitor progress. And you will note that we are going to have like about maybe 2 to 3 sets of documents here. You have the zero draft, then you have got this other document, add one, if I see it very well here. You have add one, the preliminary draft monitoring framework for goals, and then the ones for targets. So that is where we shall try to put as much information as we can. And I think we will be able to populate this, as you said somewhere. We should be having baselines here so that we really try to see progress towards where we want to go. So you may see the framework itself not having a lot of that detail, but the other addendum to it, definitely with the time, should be able to have an answer. That's how we're trying to think about this, that you have a framework with a fewer pages, then you might have another document with more information that supports implementation, but for which, when you're implementing this framework, they all have to be read in tandem. Then the last question was the monitoring framework was not, there was some noise coming there. Could you repeat it again, Hamdallah?
Excuse me.
Yes, I'm saying that some of the goals you cannot monitor whether they implemented or not.
Oh.
Because the baseline information is not available. If you take extendability, for example, or even genetic diversity, you know.
Okay. So I think again, we will dig, because by the time we have the second meeting of SABSTA, my understanding is that this document will be greatly improved from there, because we are hoping for a lot of scientific information being shared. Then we shall see if there is any that is lacking this baseline, and then we see how to deal with it. Because surely I agree with you, if there is no baseline, it becomes like something which you're just doing for fun. It may not be an issue as well. So we shall try after SABSTA 24th, and as we work towards the draft 1.0, try to see whether really this baseline is available that can help us reach those goals. I take note of that.
Okay, thank you very much, and I hope that this presentation will be available online.
Yes. Joyce will do that. Okay,
thank you very much, Francis.
Welcome. Someone was trying to ask a question, but I don't know now if she still has.
I think Handen Mohammed.
Please. Yes, I have a question. What is the role of traditional language in this framework?
Role of what? Could I come again with a question? Role of?
I repeat.
Yes, role of what?
What is the role of traditional knowledge of this framework?
Okay. Okay.
Thank you for your presentation, your good presentation.
Welcome. Actually, if I go to one of the targets quickly here, let me try. I hope I can see it easily, so that when I'm talking, I can also tell Joyce to beam it up there. Joyce, could you display target 18? I hope everyone is seeing that. I mean slide 19. Sorry, slide 19. You will see this one, which deals with the tools and solution for implementation and mainstreaming. So clearly you see target 18 says to promote education and the generation, sharing and use of knowledge relating to biodiversity. In the case of traditional knowledge, we shall be looking at innovations and practices of IPLCs with their free and prior informed consent. So that is how we will try to make sure that is very clear in this framework.
Yes, very good. Thank you very much. Yes, it's clear.
Welcome. Okay.
Okay.
Joyce. Yes. Someone, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
If I may ask 2 brief questions, please. My name is Colman O'Creadine. I'm WWF's Wildlife Policy Manager based in Nairobi. And I would like to thank you and Basile and the Secretariat for putting together this excellent presentation and for giving your time to present it repeatedly. My 2 questions, my first question relates to Target 2. And many of us have been at a loss to understand the distinction between the 10% strict protection and the wider category of protection that's described in that target. Perhaps you could explain that. And my second question is about Target 5 and the exploitation of wildlife being brought to sustainable levels, and whether that target, as phrased, takes into account indirect killing, like problem animals, bycatch from fisheries, and so on. So those are my 2 questions. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, WWF. Let me try to respond to your questions. Target 2, this is where we are saying protect sites of particular importance for biodiversity. We're on slide 17, if you're following. Protect sites of particular importance for biodiversity through protected areas and other effective area-based conservation measures, covering at least 60% of such areas, of such sites, and at least 30% of land and sea areas. So this is a mention and the importance of building on from the current target, IT target 11, I believe, where the terrestrial ecosystem was at 17, and then the marine is at 10%. But here we are now talking of going to 30% by 2030. So the famous 30 by 30 connotation. But we can still work on this if we don't need to include so many other percentages here. We can still make it much more precise if you see any confusion. But I think we want to see us doing better from the current 17% of terrestrial and 10% of marine ecosystem, so that we are at 30 by 30. I mean, by 2030 we are at 30%. That is the focus area, but we can still accommodate suggestions here.
Thank you. And the question about Target 5, whether that takes into account indirect.
Target 5, yeah, this is, of course, when you are dealing with sometimes this issue of use or harvesting, you may not be able to cover all aspects. You are talking of indirect killings. Were you meaning killing like on, for example, a road accident or what?
Bycatch from fisheries would be the best example. There could be other examples, but we could take that example for now.
Catch in fisheries.
Catch.
Okay.
So in other words, catch that isn't utilized.
Well, here our emphasis is on harvesting here, and so we're talking of trade and use of wild species. So we of course can make this broader. When we get to the indicators, because these, as I said, we need to read them in tandem. So when we get to the indicators, then some of the things you are talking about will perhaps be taken care of under indicators. You may want to monitor a number of things, and also you could have those indicators that will deal with a number of aspects. And that fisheries is one of those that will definitely be the indicators that we are going to use for monitoring this sustainable use and so forth. So the details again would be coming under our indicators for monitoring the progress towards this. So we couldn't give all statements, I mean, on specific species and so forth. We found that if we go like that, then sometimes we tend to be a little bit narrow in scope, and therefore there will be lack of flexibility. If you mention fisheries only here, then it's like you would have left the other aspects. So we are thinking, when we shall have developed the detailed indicators framework, then we could see that maybe some of the issues you are raising could be actually monitored at that level of use of the indicators.
Hi, Francis. Joyce here. Prof. Bozi would like to ask a question as well.
No problem. Go ahead.
Hi, Francis. Good afternoon. I wrote my question. I can read. Of course, I appreciated your very useful work and very useful draft. However, a comment as a contribution. Transformative change should be the basis of the global biodiversity framework and should inform, guide all its elements. So transformative change can have 3 dimensions, and the 3 dimensions that can be addressed by transformative change. One dimension is legal, maybe the second institutional, the third the socioeconomic dimension. And what are transformative change in these dimensions? One example can be, for the legal dimension, the human rights-based approach that can be a transformative legal change. The second, about institutional dimension, a strong emphasis on the role of education policy, and curricular innovations. This one can be a transformative institutional change. The third dimension, socioeconomic, an example of transformative change can be an equitable economic system and equitable sharing of biodiversity components beyond the limited genetic resources scope. This one can be a transformative socioeconomic change. In the zero draft, I am afraid there are no similar input. What is your idea, Francis, and how to address these issues? There is a human rights workshop after a few days, but anyway, in relation to the draft, in relation to the input, I would be happy to hear from you your comment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think this is one of the issues that, again, as co-chairs, we have continuously heard about its importance, this transformative change, transformational change, We've had it coming out a lot. And the key question has been, what is actually transformative change or transformative change? And as, for example, here, you looked at it in 3 dimensions. You looked at it from the legal perspective, from the institutional perspective, and then the socioeconomic angle. That is how you've seen that once you address issues in those 3 areas, then you are bringing about a transformative change. But also, during the workshops that we had regional workshops, we had different views, different ideas, even during the informal meeting, coming on what this is. Some delegates said that if you can balance all the 3 objectives of the convention, conservation, sustainable use, access, and benefit sharing, if you can balance that and implement them this time, other than doing only 1 or 2 of them, like maybe they see in the current strategic plan, then we have brought about a transformative change. That was the other school of thought. Still, the other school of thought was, if you handle both the direct and the indirect drivers of biodiversity loss, if you tackle those, as you've seen, you have tried to list them, then you are also bringing about transformative change. Now you brought the 3 as, I'm sure it makes sense as well if you take action from those other 3 angles. So as co-chairs, the challenge you've had mainly has been the lack of like a very clear common ground on what this transformative change is. We know that definitely we want to see something bigger, better happening this time around. We want to see some transformation. So for now, we've just decided to come with those targets as you see them, and perhaps you could see whether any of those targets does tackle some of those. Because when you look at mainstreaming, we've said we want to mainstream into socioeconomic sectors. We've said we want to handle matters of legal, policy, institutional framework, and so forth. It is there in those other targets that deals with the tools and solutions. So it might not be said that these are transformative targets or transformative change as the word comes, but they may be implied, so that when you take action in these targets, you could see us getting into those areas of transformative change. Then you see we have got targets on tackling drivers, both direct, both indirect as well. So when you look at, for example, the threats, that is mainly the direct drivers. Then when you look at the one that deals with meeting needs of people, some of those are mainly your indirect things that are there. So this is where we are going to keep listening to you, the delegates, to see how we move forward with this transformative change. But I think for now, we've just tried to put these targets in a way that could help us tackle what is at stake now, and whether once you've done that, then the transformative change that we want to see will be happening somehow, somewhere. So we have not used that word in a very explicit manner for now, because of those challenges we say we have seen coming, because we didn't see delegates like agreeing on one area that transformative change entails. But talking about rights and so forth, they're implied, they're in these targets. They are there. Recognizing the rights of people, they are there. And I think, let me see whether I can see it here. There's a target that actually makes mention of that, rights of people. I don't know whether I can see it immediately. Okay, target 19. Joyce, could you put put slide 19, and then we go to target 19 again, slide 19, target 19. When you see just the very last, promote the full and effective participation of IPLCs and of women, girls, as well as youth in decision-making related to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, ensuring equitable participation and rights over relevant resource. So this is what we're saying. We've tried to capture some of these, maybe in the different elements of the targets. So that's how the issue of rights, we've made sure, because it came out very, very much in almost all the regional consultations, we've been keen enough to make sure that that word, in a way, is not completely lost, but is somewhere in one of these targets. That is now on target 19. Okay, I hope that tries to answer your question. So we've not, for sure, been very explicit with the word transformative in any of, as you would do. Maybe you expected us to have transformative and some targets under there, but in totality, we are seeing that action taken across all these targets will lead us to that transformative change that we want.
Hi, Francis. The next participant, Wazi Madivani, has a question for you.
Yes, Wazi.
I'm sorry, it's my first time using this app and I'm technologically challenged. But good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to discuss the framework. We have a number of comments which we will share with the others on the call, but I have some specific questions, and the first one is on target 2 and the possibility or probability of retaining some of the elements were part of the original IT target 11, especially the elements around effective management. The need for us to stress and highlight that it's not just about protecting the areas, but those areas must be effectively managed as well. And the targets around effective management are probably even more important than the expansion because we have a lot of paper parks. And how do we have a meaningful target in that regard? And then I also wanted further understanding around the notion of the 10% strict versus the other elements, and whether or not we will have a perverse incentive to manage the other protected areas at a lower standard and only focus resources on the 10%, because issues of means of implementation are key, and so this needs to be apparent in the way we also phrase our targets. So I have those two specific questions, and the last one is around the opportunity for us to use an SDG framing in order to assist with our mainstreaming requirements. And is it possible for us to use the IP-based basis around alignment and contributions to the SDGs and frame our targets around those specific SDGs that could benefit from enhanced biodiversity action and certain elements, and then use that to inform the mainstreaming component? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me try to get to the slide, target slide 17, I believe. So I'm on slide 17, and Wazi, thank you. I think the question you raised on target 2 more or less relates again to what the gentleman from WWF I think also raised. I think there is the issue of so many percentages perhaps in there that could end up the people choosing with one which is relatively maybe easier to get to. And therefore I see you saying that are we going to just focus on the 10%, the intactness, and leave the rest. So this is good food for thought for us as co-chairs. We thought that we could do some of give parties some elements of doing a number of things. You could be talking about the 30 by 30%, but maybe there are certain areas that for you as a country, you just want it to remain intact and under strict protection. There is absolutely, perhaps very limited human activities in there, and so that the pristine nature of the ecosystems could better be enhanced there. But if this will prove problematic, then we will really listen and take action when you get the next draft. That is the draft 1.0. Still on that target, you said we needed to take into account the other elements that are in IT target 11. I agree with you. Issues on effective management. The only because when we are talking about connectivity and integrity, perhaps we need to have also put that into account. But we also should bear in mind that as we take that into account, usually when you have got a number of say elements within a target, then also you have to have indicators on connectivity, you have to have indicators on integrity, you have to have indicators on effective management. So each of those will tend to have its own, and therefore when you are implementing at national level, then you have to go full throttle on all those. So if the understanding will be we need to take this, we don't have any rigidity on that, we can always bring it on board. And that, of course, will still take into account our very own also idea of never completely to abandon the IT targets, but rather see how to integrate them in where it is appropriate in this target. So this one, I take note of it. Then the use of SDGs in framing this, and especially looking at how this framework will, lead to SDG or SDG benefiting from it. I think that is a good point, bearing in mind, of course, that the framework more or less has the same time frame with the SDGs, because it is the SDGs end in 2030, and the first phase of implementation also is 2021, 2030. So we will again reflect on this. We've said it already that this framework, one of its purpose is of course to contribute to implementing the SDGs. So if it is not very clear now, that's what we are saying. If people are not seeing it, sometimes when you're writing these things, you keep thinking like maybe you already tackled it, but the other eye that looks at the same document finds there is a gap there. So we shall reflect on this and see how we try to bring this connectivity very clear. Surely once we have a direct link which can be seen, this political will we are talking about will be a lot easier to sell or to get at the national level, even at global level.
Hi, Francis, Joyce here. There's Maxi Louis from Namibia, but just before, I'd like to bring out that the meeting has this should be the last question, because the meeting will need to end as the other meeting with Basil will start. Okay. Just for your information.
All right, we are ending at is it at 5 or because I know we are supposed to have ended at 4:30, but the arrivals were late. So we began 15 minutes a little bit. So maybe we are ending at actually 4:45. Let me hear the questions.
We have 10 minutes.
Okay, all right, then that's good. And as the questions come in, I see the participants. Hamdallah, you there? Is Hamdallah still on?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I was saying that I see participants, unless they will come in the next few minutes. 25. I don't know what has happened really to the region. I would have expected maybe like 40, but I don't know what exactly happened. Okay, the questions which is coming.
Maxi Louis from Namibia.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
I don't, I'm not sure if they've left the.
They should be there
The
because
webinar.
this number, the number 25 is still on. So maybe she doesn't have a question.
She had
Okay.
a question on the working groups, but she put that on the chat, but I'm not sure if she's.
Did she want some clarity or what? The way
Not sure.
organizing the meeting. So we can't ask the question for her.
No, unfortunately. I'm gonna ask her, I'm gonna send her a reply.
So what was the question? Not clear, okay. Any other question? Okay, Wazi, you there? Wazi? Is Wazi still with us?
Yes, what is, yeah, she's just getting confused by the technology. She needs capacity building.
So Wazi, how many people were in for the AGN?
For the core group,
The AGN, you remember the one? Yeah.
The meeting we had 11 countries that are part of the core group. Yes.
Okay, fine. All right. So any other questions?
Maybe if you can just, while I have the floor and your attention, Francis, can you tell us a little about the approach that will be used at the open-ended working group meeting? Are you going to open everything up or break it up?
Wazi, I hope I get you. Open it up, break it up. What if I may go to very fast to I think slide 25 again, Wazi, and part of it goes to slide 26. When we are going to have the meeting of the open working group, we are going to present the draft as is, as proposed now, and we expect that discussion will come on that draft as is. So yes, we would like to see that parties will be able to, or stakeholders will be able to really give views on the zero draft as we have proposed, because we have managed to give targets now on all the 20 of them. But where we are able to agree, where we're able to get some text and move forward, then we can take that text forward. Where maybe because we still have challenges with either information not being there, and we are hoping to do it further after maybe SABSA 24th, then and also SBI, then that text is still going to be improved after those meetings, and then it is presented again at working group 3. So there will still be opportunity to look at this. Much as we are going to open it up, we know some areas we may agree on, some areas we may not. So we shall be noting how the discussions go, and then we accordingly advise on how we are going to proceed with the discussions. But that is it really, that this text is going to present it as you see it, and you'll be free to give your views on all of them as presented. But some, these are still work in progress, and therefore we are still going to do more work even after. Hello? Hello? I'm now left with the, what is, are you having?
Francis said. the people are disconnected or not. I don't know. I'm still online, you know.
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what about the others, in fact, you know.
I can hear them. I can hear them.
Okay, good.
Hi,
We're
Francis.
still
I
here.
don't think there are any questions left.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're
Do we
still
have
here.
do we have 42 people? What is the number we have here?
We have 22 people.
What is the 43 in red on my screen here?
Oh, it's messages on the chat.
Oh, okay. Okay. They started with 25 anyway, so it's okay. Okay, then maybe the very last questions and then we close.
There's one question from Zambia. JP Frida, he's asking, how is Zambia participating in this process?
How is Zambia participating? Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Can I answer that question?
That is Zambia, please.
Yes.
Because
My
I'm
name is
getting
Mangala.
confused. I was
Yes.
getting
My name is Mangala from Zambia.
Yes.
Yes. I just want to address the question that has been raised by, is it JP Frida? So Zambia has been participating in the process. I mean, we are participating in some of these meetings, and then even internally, we are having consultations. So just like today, we had a stakeholder consultative meeting where we're looking at the zero draft with some of our colleagues, and they were providing comments. So as we come to the open-ended working group in Rome, we'll be able to bring out some of the comments that are coming from at least national level. So that is, I hope that answers it.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, so I think that is okay. And of course, then you will also be able to share your ideas and views at Open Work Group 2 on any of those targets and whether vision, mission. So hopefully your national consultation feeds at that level. And maybe within your African region, for example, you could also try to make sure that whatever you are thinking at Zambia, the region will be able to support you in it or take up that view as well. So it becomes easier for you to, you know, since you are entering negotiations, it becomes easier for you to have the issue better discussed. Yes, any other? Okay, Joyce, and is Valerie here or it is Joyce only?
It's Joyce.
Yeah, Joyce, are we reaching a point of closing now?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I think we need to let you go.
Yeah, I need to let Joyce go. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Those of you who have been able to make it through this call. We know it is a very busy schedule for most people. I would love to know what, in terms of getting connected to this. Maybe it was probably internet, and maybe also perhaps it is in English. So we could have had challenges with those who necessarily don't speak English. So maybe this is a lesson learned. We see how to go about it in the next. But I would love to hear from the African group, maybe when we meet in Rome, what has been their challenge in getting this kind, participating this kind of call, because it may happen again before we go to either Open Work Group 3. So thank you very much. Hope to see you in Rome. And please, we really appreciate your support. We appreciate all these comments. We are just trying to put the ideas you bring to us, continue to correct us, continue to bring these ideas. We are willing to make the changes as we go along. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You
Thank
too.
you very much,
Well
Francis, for the excellent presentation. And we look forward to receiving a copy of your presentation. And thank everybody from our brothers and sisters from African countries. Thank you.
Thank you.